Hey, beautiful people. Yes, I do have my keys on a whole freaking chain here. Like, I gotta keep them on a chain, else I'll lose them. So, shout out to Dr. Umar. He has all of these viral moments that are going like all over the place as a result of his consistent and very consistent opinion about the plight of Black people, particularly Black people with African ancestry and those who are, indigenous to America, who have experienced a traumatic, sort of arrival here that wasn't on, cruise ships. It was a result of slave ships. And so a lot of that trauma and those adverse experiences as a result of ancestors that were never really properly mentally and emotionally and even physically managed has really resulted in a lot of what we see today in terms of our social determinants of health, looking at things from economics to health outcomes, right? We are passing away at alarming rates at an early age from preventable diseases like diabetes, heart disease, even obesity. Our diet is still one that is rooted in things that are extremely unhealthy for us. There's still a smoking problem in our community, which leads to all sorts of cancers and things like that. Yes, we definitely will die of something, but it's the quality of life that we're looking to achieve. So I do respect that. I also understand that there's 19 nations that have been eradicated as a result of, truly being, oppressed and depressed and never to be heard of again. And when you look at the plight of Black people, particularly Black people indigenous to America, their experiences are so disheartening and demoralizing that you often wonder what will be the outcome. What will Black people look like as a group, as a community in 10, 20 years, 50 years from now? So I respect the fact that as a fellow mental health expert, that he is on this trajectory to continue to lift up ways that we need to begin to change our behaviors and our mindsets in order to survive. 1 in 800 Black people died of COVID. Our life expectancy since COVID has decreased by almost a decade. We all can, attest to knowing people who have died prematurely. The rates of Black people who are incarcerated, who are dealing with other types of societal oppression and depression, it's beyond imaginable. And so we do need to take a stance in terms of where do we want to go from here? How do we build our neighborhoods, because really that's all we have is neighborhoods, because a community is by design a collective. So it's a collective group of people who have a stock, if you will. They're invested in that community from a economic standpoint, from a health standpoint, from a wellness standpoint, from a recreational standpoint. And we don't necessarily have communities like that here. We had communities, and we don't need to go into Tulsa and all the other places that were deliberately destroyed as people of color tried to build that sense of safety and a safety net for their community. It was just deliberately destroyed, and there's a lot of research around that. But one of the things that I think is so critical about what he speaks to often is just like this idea that Black people are seemingly very unhappy with themselves. And so as a result, they're looking for love, they're looking for safety, they're looking for peace in other places and spaces. And we're all guilty of it. When we make money, we want to move into what we feel is a safer neighborhood. When we get to a certain point, we almost feel like if we have children by someone who is deeper melaninated, if you will, that our children will be victims of more racial oppression because they'll have a darker hue, and maybe by, you know, breeding with people outside of our race or ethnicity, that we're in some ways helping them. And we understand psychologically where that all comes from and why people feel that way. And I know most people would never talk about this, but as a mental health professional, I can tell you that I've heard so many things. I've known people who've committed suicide for not feeling a sense of self-worth, not feeling that they aesthetically represented what was considered beautiful. So yeah, it's a lot for us to kind of think about and digest. And we do need people like Dr. Umar in our society, people who dissent, right? The masses, people who go against the rhetoric that's fed to us, people who are trying to lift up another way of thinking, because we aren't monolithic. And so, and I'm not saying monolithic in that, oh, well, he promotes like not being with the snow bunny and that's kind of being monolithic. No, no, no. That's being more of a survival technique, right? Most species do stay together because you're trying to preserve that species. But if you don't see a value in preserving that species, yes, you will partake in annihilating it. So I understand that. And the species is the human, but there's also different, you know, breeds of us as humans, right? Like our ethnicities, our, you know, cultures, race, all that kind of thing. And we do know that in America, there has always been this whole idea of colorism, and it's not just here. It's with colonialism, it's all over the world now. Like if you're not of a brighter hue, you're not as beautiful as someone else, or you're not as desired, right? So I do respect him for staying consistent with that message, and to give young girls who are darker hue, who are looking to have a family and hoping to, you know, have a sense of community, that there's someone who represents their voice. And I feel like he's giving a voice to the voiceless in that way. And lastly, I just want to point out that, you know, as mental health practitioners, we don't often talk about a lot of things that we experience and the things that our patients experience. But what I am seeing in the Black community is that there's a lack of community planning. It's, for some reason, as much as we feel like we're living in life, we're not preparing for it. So we don't even trust one another enough to want to set up a health proxy, someone who can make decisions for you when you are, for whatever reason, unable to make those decisions. You have no one who can go into your home and help to pull things together. There may be one or two people that you even trust that much, and you don't even trust to tell them in life that they're a beneficiary, because you feel like they may hurt you. Like, that's a real thing. So all of the work and struggle, and I want to have, you know, generational wealth, when you have no generation to leave it to, right? If you get sick today, who's going to take over your business? If you get sick today and you're unable to make decisions, who's going to care for you? What will your end of life care look like? Are there people who can, that you trust enough to be able to carry that legacy along and to care for you in those end days? Like, we need to get back to community, because without it, it's a lonely place to die and not feel like you have anyone there that you can trust and that loves you. But until we start to love ourselves, until we start to think with the mindset of we and not me, there's some dark days ahead. And so many of us have felt those dark days that we don't even care. We've become emotionalists, right? We lack emotion. So keep trying to love. Shout out to you, Dr. Umar. Shout out to you.